I'd just like to thank you for taking the time out and coming here today and imparting such valuable knowledge to us, and we really appreciate it. And if I could just ask you a couple of questions. So, in the Indian market scenario, what have been the recent changes in the field of market research?
I think huge changes. I have been in market research for how many years now? For almost 40 years.
Wow.
All right. And when we started way back in '73, market research was just in its infancy. It just started in India. In fact, there were advertising agencies at small departments. There was no separate company just doing market research. Of course, now it's evolved a huge in terms of the size and the complexity. But from '73, I'll tell you, for 30 years, it was basically the same. It was, you're asking me some questions. I'd go to a housewife, ask her some questions, get answers, write down a pencil paper, and analyze the data.
Right.
And that was pretty much what it was for 30 years. There was no change. Then the first change, I think, came when the computers happened. So people started noting things in the computer.
The digital age.
The digital came much later. The computer age was before the digital is when the internet happened.
Okay.
The computers were there before the internet also. So computers came in and analysis was faster, recording was quicker. So I think that was one, but it was a minor change, it was a change of method. But the basic question and answer still remained pretty much the same. I think the biggest change which has occurred is over the last 5 years, where actually you don't even have to ask questions to the respondent. So that's what is called passive interviews as opposed to active, passive recording.
Okay.
So basically you're, like say you go into the internet and you surf, and you can see a whole lot of comments that people have made about a particular brand or product or service. And see, these comments are made just by them without knowing that they're supposed to be doing a market survey. The moment you're sitting here and you're asking me questions, I might actually say responses which I may want you to believe I believe in. Right? So it could be in some stage not a real response. But when you're looking at passive responses, those guys are not even aware that they're going to be analyzed. So there's much more veracity in those. But the problem is to try and analyze that data, to dig it out. And now you've got tools to go into, like a spider, go into the web and select that kind of stuff. So I think that's a huge change. I think market research is also grappling with, because they've always been used to this, this kind of format of a respondent and interviewer.
A one-on-one basis.
One-on-one basis. And then now other agencies have started cropping up which are doing this other stuff.
Okay.
And that's competing with them.
Okay.
And that's actually shrinking the conventional market research model.
Okay.
So that's, I think, a huge change in the
There's a
industry.
change that's occurring from that angle.
Yeah.
Okay. In a diverse market like India, how important a role does market research play for brands to stay ahead of their competition?
I think it plays a huge role, but I'll tell you, I might be a little contrarian in my view here, but I think now, market research doesn't play as much a role as it used to play. And I'll tell you why I think so. I think that, consumers, first of all, are become much more discerning. They can figure out on their own what they want. And they're not, I think, as influenced by as advertising as they used to be in the past.
Okay.
So I feel the role of advertising also has diminished as consumers take more charge of themselves and their decisions.
Right.
All right. The second thing is that with the supermarket, you can actually go and see and feel
The product.
the product, which was not there before. So that also has given the consumer more, let's say, ammunition in terms of deciding what he or she should buy. So I think it's in that sense the role of both these research and advertising is actually, in my view, diminished, although many people may not agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are the innovations and MR organizations should focus on to stay relevant in today's competitive landscape?
See, the main thing they said is to look at digital, because that's where the whole scene is shifting, right?
Right.
So they have to get away from this person to person kind of model
Right.
to look at information coming from the internet.
Hmm.
And of course, there are two ways of doing it. One is the passive stuff that I told you, and the
Right.
other one is to put more and more questions online. The moment you put questions online, you have to have a different set of questions that you can actually administer, because it has to be much more a yes no kind of a thing. You can't have a guy is not going to write a detailed response
Right.
and type it out. He might say it when he talk to you. So the whole format of questions has to change. It has to be much shorter question. As time span will be limited.
Attention
So you can't
span
have
is also short.
now the average length of a question I would say is at least 30-40 minutes, which is crazy. And you just cannot have that online.
Right.
So you'll have to be thinking in terms of your head also to think of much more succinct
Okay.
kind of questions
Shorten
to ask.
it.
Yeah. So that's another change that I see in my
Okay.
head.
Okay. For an aspiring researcher, what are the key qualities required to be successful?
See, it depends whether it's quality or quantity. I think for both quality and quantity. First of all, you have to have you got to be empathetical with consumers. You got to want to know about people. But I think there are two kinds of people. One is people who are very happy doing things of their own. Or let's say like an engineering design or even an architect designing stuff, right? So he's basically working on his own in terms of the actual design. He doesn't need
Right.
people to, might need people to collaborate, to give him inputs. But ultimately, he's doing a design of stuff. Whereas in research, you're interacting with people. And some people are very good at that, and some people are not that good at that. So if you're not as good in terms of interacting with people and more than interacting, being conscious of other people's opinions, you got to have an open mind to be able to imbibe different
Take in whatever there is.
responses. So that I think is absolutely critical for a market researcher, whether it's quality or quantity.
Okay.
And in quantity, I think what you need to do is to have good, obviously, quantity skills. I'm not saying you're going to be, an Einstein or something in terms of,
Yeah.
maths or something, but you've got to be. You see, there are people I've seen who, if you see a spreadsheet with numbers, they get totally zapped here. So then market research, at least quantity is not for you. I mean, you've got to make sense of those numbers and got to make sense of it very quickly.
Right.
So that's the second, I think, requisite required for a quantity researcher.
Okay.
And the third thing, which I think is common for both quantity and quality, is the ability to translate what you got from the study in terms of a report which is actionable. And you see, the ability to write properly is also important. I mean, I've seen a lot of people in the course of this last few years who are very good in terms of the first two qualities, but unfortunately, maybe it's their background, etc., which makes them difficult to be good presenters.
Okay.
See, and ultimately, we're not levers or PNG. We're not making a soap or a detergent. That's not our end product.
Right.
What is our end product is the report of the presentation. And what is critical to the presentation is who's presenting it.
Right.
So you've got to have a guy who's coherent, who speaks properly.
Makes an impression.
And so that's again, and that unfortunately, you see, then there you got your background, etc., plays a role in that, and it's very difficult in a place like this, in 7 or 8 months, to kind of give that kind of skills or learnings to the person. So that's unfortunately a thing that we have to live with, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what do you think sets NCL apart from other B schools?
This one here, I think the most important thing to my mind is that we focus on, I'm talking about my market research program, not the other program, the market research program. See, the other B schools, and that's one of the reasons we started this, what I used to find is, even if in those days we could go to IIM Ahmedabad, etc., to take people, because the salaries were not that crazy as these days. So you find that the focus on market research in these so-called premium B schools was very limited. So whenever we used to take people in, although they had a pretty broad perspective of the industry, but the focus on market research was so limited that even when they joined as a management trainee, it would take at least 8-10 months for them to be kind of
Okay.
finish their groundwork and start actually contributing to the company. Whereas here, because we train them right from the beginning in market research, it's the moment they leave this institute and they're at Nielsen or wherever, they're absolutely hitting the ground running here.
Right.
They're contributing from day one. So that's I think a very important advantage I feel that there is in school. The other thing I think is that you see we have practicing managers everywhere, even in the non-research. So they're imbibing stuff which is actually contemporary and what is really topical. Whereas I think in a lot of schools, a lot of theory that is propounded, which actually is it doesn't mesh in with the marketplace. So a lot of stuff you're learning which is very, very theoretical.
Right.
So I think these are the two key differentiators.
That's different between the
Yeah, very
NCL and
different, yeah.
other B schools.
And I must add that I think the amount of stuff that we do, which is also non-research, is pretty good. We, the background in marketing, sales.
Very extensive.
Yes, so it's not that you're just doing research and nothing else.
Right.
So you're getting a very broad brush background of how business is run.
Yes.
So that's good as well. Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for taking time out again and coming here.
No, thanks. Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much.